All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Thursday, July 4th, 2024. Happy Independence Day, everyone. Glad you're along for the ride with us. We are still tracking Hurricane Beryl in the Western Caribbean Sea this morning as our only real main player in the Atlantic Basin today. We still have Invest 96L trailing behind, but it continues to be absolutely pummeled by Beryl's outflow and kind of jet wash behind it. So right now, Beryl is the only storm we are concerned about here on this 4th of July holiday week. So we are still keeping up with Beryl here this afternoon. Hurricane Center's latest advisory, 11 a.m. this morning, maximum sustained winds 115 miles per hour. So Beryl has weakened back to a Category 3. Since we last talked on Tuesday here on YouTube, the storm had maintained its Category 5 intensity for a while, but it began to very slowly weaken. But as it approached Jamaica, it was really fighting off the wind shear quite impressively. And the storm managed to slip by Jamaica as a Category 4 hurricane with about 145 mile per hour winds. However, thankfully, it looks like the worst stayed just south of Jamaica. And when I say just south, I mean the eye wall was between the actual Jamaica label and the actual island on the map. I mean, it was within miles of being much, much worse. But besides some really southern coastal communities there, it looks like they did escape the worst of Beryl's wrath, thankfully. And the Cayman Islands also received sort of a grazing blow as Beryl moved through. So today, again, the storm down to 115 miles per hour. Still a Category 3 hurricane, still impressive, but the satellite presentation looks much worse with Beryl today. You can see there's no longer that clear eye inside that CDO. It's all cloud-filled, and the storm is definitely asymmetrical, more oval-shaped in nature, where the more of the convection is back towards Cuba, and the front part of the storm is heavily eroded, and this is because Beryl has been facing that strong westerly wind shear for a while now, and it appears that the red hot ocean temperatures it had beneath it behind, over here are not probably quite as warm and ridiculously hot. So Beryl is no longer able to make that, Herculean effort of fighting that wind shear off. So storm definitely is weakening today, but it still remains a strong hurricane, and it's going to move into the coastline of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as a hurricane later on Friday. So if we look at the National Hurricane Center's forecast, they have this making landfall sometime Friday morning. And one of the things we have to watch over the next couple of days is Beryl is going to be slowing down. That movement was over 20 miles per hour. Now it's down to 18 miles per hour. And if we look at the extended part of this forecast cone, we have Beryl moving through here again throughout the rest of today and part of tomorrow morning. It's going to be moving along towards Mexico, and then it's going to landfall likely just south of Cozumel and then move through the Yucatan Peninsula during the day on Friday. Now, that's about, 12 hours or so on land. It's definitely going to impact the storm, and we expect Beryl to exit the Yucatan as a tropical storm. But notice carefully that these dots are a little bit closer together, and that's because Beryl is going to be slowing down. Again, when we that's what we've been talking about, the high pressure system forecast to keep Beryl at bay, and what's been keeping Beryl at bay for a couple of days. We'll back this up to this morning. Is this big high has been sitting across the southeast U.S. and has been keeping Beryl pushed way down to the south and moving fast. Well, as we work through the rest of this holiday weekend, the high breaks down. So by Saturday morning, once Beryl has moved off of the Yucatan, the high has shifted more over Florida, and behind it, the high pressure is weakening. So that door is kind of opening up towards Texas a little bit, and the storm is not being pushed along nearly as fast as it was. So you have this combination with Beryl being right here and having that collapsing steering flow that we're going to see the storm slow down as it leaves the Yucatan into the Gulf of Mexico. And this does two things. One, it gives it more time to turn north. And number two, it's going to give it some time over water where the wind shear may not be as impressive over the Gulf of Mexico. There's probably going to be some, but it's not going to be as impressive. So it does appear Beryl is going to be maintaining as a tropical storm for a day or so, but could still become a hurricane again before landfall. Now, as far as the landfall point is concerned, the models are locking in around the Rio Grande Valley. We're looking, likely Padre Island to maybe the northern coast of Mexico, right along the border, but it looks like somewhere around Brownsville, South Padre Island is probably about where Beryl is going to come ashore. We, at this point, have fairly high confidence that if you're south of Corpus Christi, this isn't going to impact you. We're throwing out, Central Gulf Coast, we're throwing out Cameron, we're Houston, you're probably even good to go on this one. But, if I was too much further south than Houston, I would still be watching this carefully. But it does appear again that that area is where this is going to come ashore. And right now, it looks like Monday morning is where we're actually going to have those impacts with that timing slowing down just a little bit. So you can see here the GFS brings us along, moves it through the Yucatan, weakens it to a tropical storm, that 1,002 millibar pressure indicating tropical storm strength. But then the pressure begins to drop as it moves towards Texas, and the GFS on this run has moving in right along the border. And this has been something the models have been doing. The European has corrected further north. The GFS has corrected further south, which is what they usually do. They'll usually stay split apart, and then they'll come together towards the end, and they kind of lock in on that position, and that's where it winds up hitting. So that kind of lines up well. Our intensity models, again, some of them show it maintaining hurricane intensity. Some of them show that tropical storm dip. But then even notice the ones that show the tropical storm dip over the Yucatan on Friday do indicate some recovery back to near hurricane intensity before making that second landfall and then cratering. The models that aren't cratering it are probably just not seeing the track correctly, or seeing it curving well into the Gulf of Mexico, which it's not going to do at this point. So that's the latest on Beryl from what I had today. Ensemble models, again, showing the same thing. GFS still a little bit further north, but generally speaking, what we have going on here. AL96, again, following Beryl, not doing very well today. The jet wash, this big channel of outflow that's just pummeling the storm, is still just beating it to death. And it's just, Beryl was too strong for this storm to have any hope trailing that close behind. The wave axis is heavily tilted off to the east, and this would have a lot of work ahead of it. Hurricane Center still gives it about a 20% shot to develop, but like most of the systems now, it appears that this is just going to cram itself into Mexico like everything else. And again, models not very enthused with it. European doesn't even give it any hope, and then the GFS not showing it a whole lot of favor either. So could be more rain. Again, this like rain mass following Beryl is pretty much all this is at this point. So that's pretty much it, guys. I think the Atlantic is going to quiet down as we go into the rest of July. It looks like at least for another 2 or 3 weeks after, we should have some quieter conditions after that outburst. But we do have to get this one ashore, and we'll be tracking it throughout landfalls. So that's all I got for you guys this morning. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.